Everybody knows I'm in my vehicle this morning, so I'll probably keep my camera off most of the time.
Oh, we'd like to see where you were driving.
I'll tell you what, it's a pretty nice day for at least a couple more hours until the wind starts blowing.
We're glad you're here. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We'll call this meeting to order for the Legislative Committee. So go ahead. Are we recording, Courtney?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here today. We'll call to order the Legislative Committee for the Colorado Forest Health Council, and I'm Chair Jody Shattuck McNally. So let's go through roll call. Thank you.
All right, Samantha Albert.
Present.
Christy Belton.
I'm here.
Hillary Cooper. Pat Dorsey.
Yes.
Director Matt McCombs.
Present.
Yes. Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally.
Here.
Mark Morgan.
Here.
Julie Stencil, who I thought I just saw, so maybe she'll pop in a second, and Sylvan White Skunk. So we do have quorum today.
Great. I think we also have a guest today, Mr. Lucero. Would you like to introduce yourself and say hello and welcome?
Thank you. Yeah, James Lucero. I joined the Colorado State Forest team with Matt last Monday, so I've had about a full week on the job, and Matt invited me to just kind of watch and listen to kind of get up to speed on all of these issues. So thanks for having me. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, for context, James is in our new associate director for for policy and legislative affairs, and so just getting up to speed. So let's be kind.
Of course. I just wanted to welcome him, Director McCombs. It's nice to see a new face. Welcome. Okay, so let's talk about the minutes. Anybody have any changes? Oh, there's Julie. Hello, Julie. Welcome.
Good morning. Sorry, tech issues.
No worries. I've been having tech issues all week, so I had to testify yesterday on a bill that I had to completely turn off my camera, so I couldn't talk. So anyway, welcome everyone. Anyone have any changes or additions to the minutes? Okay, with that, I welcome a motion to approve the minutes.
So move.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. So now we'll move on to our next section. Daphne is, as expected, very busy with the session. There's a lot going on in the halls right now. And so she'll be joining us when she can. And when she does, we'll just stop where we're at and add, start this talking where we can when she comes in. So first, I thought we just, I can update that I testified on the House side, and that passed the Senate Bill 5, our Workforce and Forestry Bill, passed out of committee unanimously. And it is currently moving its way through the House. As you know, it came out of appropriations, and as I understand, nothing was, all the money is attached still, everything. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. So I think we're in a good position, and I'm sure Courtney will have even more updates. I thought maybe we could talk to Director McCombs about the nursery bill, and then maybe Director McCombs, you can talk about us being, as a commissioner, but we both were at the farm bill discussion with Congressman Neguse, and Director McCombs brought up some good points that might end up having some federal support from one of our very hardworking congressmen. If you don't mind, Director McCombs, since we're waiting on Daphne, and I just thought maybe that would be really helpful for the Forest Health Council to know that we're looking to maybe do something, or not us, you are, and I support that as a commissioner. So good morning, Council Member White Skunk. Glad to have you.
Good
We're
Good
talking
morning,
about,
everyone.
good morning. Great. We're talking about the bills and legislation, and Director McCombs is going to share about the nursery bill. The Senate Bill 5 is passed out committee in the House and is still going strong. So Director McCombs.
So sure, thanks, Commissioner. So the bill was 1060 was heard in the Senate Ag Committee and passed. I think on a 4-3 vote, and we'll now move on to Senate Appropriations. And so if it's going to go anywhere, I mean, so typically you don't provide testimony in the Appropriations committees, and so we'll be available for questions. But if it moves through, then we have a pretty good shot of it being brought to the floor of the Senate. And then we're trying to be very, very supportive without taking it too hard on the line on the funding, just because it is outside the budget. And we want to continue to honor the fact that there's a very competitive environment for very limited resources, but at the same time, as I've said before, ensure that the legislature has the best information in front of them and has a real understanding of what the great potential that exists as it relates to reforestation and restoration, and both post-fire and just general forest health. So we'll do some we'll continue to support the sponsors as well to ensure that they're in good shape to to represent the bills before the various committees and then on the floor. So that's where things are at. So I mean, if you think about it, we've passed both the House Ag and Resources Committee, passed on the House floor, passed out of Senate Ag Committee, and it's now moving to approach. So those are all wins. I mean, they could have fallen off at any point in time throughout the duration of the process. So this is still an indicator that it remains a priority for a lot of members. And certainly we are on the back end working to ensure that we can leverage these dollars to the best of our ability as it relates to partnering with the federal government and the sizable resources they have contributing to the reforestation efforts in the country. I'll let you know that we have a conversation coming up with we've had some preliminary conversations with the Washington office of the U.S. Forest Service and the regional office, and we're trying to get a meeting with the Undersecretary's office for Natural Resources and Environment in USDA to talk about a pilot, and have been dialoguing with some of his senior staff, Dr. Homer Wilkes, who I've been able to meet a couple times as he's been in Colorado. And so things are looking really good to whatever we get from the legislature in this session, in addition to what's already been appropriated. We really feel good that we'll be able to leverage a substantial amount of those dollars. I've been trying to get our federal partners to come over the top and make some sort of handshake commitment that we could then show as leverage during this session, but I don't think that's going to happen because they don't like to mix in state politics, which I respect. But that touches on some feedback that we provided to Congressman Neguse last Friday. He was doing a farm bill listening session, so we highlighted some key policies that were being advanced by the National Association of State Foresters, but also had really important impacts that could have really positive impacts here in Colorado. And that was around expanding good neighbor authority so that tribes and counties and state governments could retain those receipts under those good neighbor authority agreements and invest them wherever their highest and best use was, as opposed to just on National Forest System lands. We talked about a program that would codify funding that was in the bipartisan infrastructure law that went to states to help implement forest action plans. I mean, that's a huge step in the right direction, providing some discretionary funding for states to determine where those federal dollars should be invested, and doing so in an all lands approach if appropriate. And then we also talked about it's the name of the program is Ringer, and I just don't have my notes in front of me, but it's about taking the Reforestation Trust Fund, which is the Replant Act dollars. If you're at all familiar with the Replant Act as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, it removed a cap on softwood lumber, a cap on a tariff on softwood lumber imports that has generated like over $300 million in funds that are available for reforestation. So getting some of those dollars appropriated to support state nurseries and support genetic and to support seed genetic work around seed generation and storage as we continue to lose major seed sources with every major wildfire across the West. So those are some things that we talked about. And it's really good when a member of Congress says, I'm going to run all of those bills, you know, at the end of your session. So we're already following up with National Association of State Foresters policy folks, and as well as the personal staff and committee staff, acknowledging that Congressman Nagutis is not a ag committee member in the House, but he is part of Democratic leadership, and he does hold ranking member status on the Federal Lands Committee of the House Natural Resources Committee. So he'll be influential in these negotiations, and we're going to make sure he has the best information and the best opportunity to move bills and to move policies forward that'll benefit Colorado in the Farm Bill and otherwise. So it was really positive in interactions, and Commissioner Shattuck McNally, as usual, continues to gain awesome fluency in these issues and represented us and represented Larimer County really well. So it was a great discussion, and I hope that we see some good policy movement come out of those discussions. Did I miss anything?
No, and I have to just say you did a phenomenal job talking all those points through with Congressman Nagusia. You hit it out of the ballpark. I don't think I was there as a commissioner. I mentioned that I sit on the Forest Health Council, and it just happened at the end. We had this opportunity to share some of these issues, and Manny took a lot of notes, and he's certainly, he's on fire about this. So this is great. So it was a great opportunity to talk. So well done, Director McCombs. And then also the Colorado Public Radio was there following him. And at the end, we just kind of, they had asked Director McCombs some more clarifying questions. So I'm not sure what we'll all end up, but we'll certainly be keeping an eye out what comes out of that. That was unexpected. And that was kind of what you were talking about, Mr. Morgan, is sometimes we get in these spots. And so this was an opportunity to push for, you know, some of the things that Director McCombs is trying to get done. So I thought it was a great opportunity. So for those first two items, anybody have any questions or anything else you want to share, Director McCombs? You did a phenomenal job on last Friday. It was great. I mean, I was kind of trying to wait to jump in because I had everything I wanted to push about SNAP and all these other things, and the farmers. Everyone kept taking my checking points. So like, well, I'll check that off the list. I don't need to repeat that. So it was a really great session. Mr. Morgan.
Question and a comment on a couple things. Number one, Director McCombs, I realize you have to be respectful of limited resources within the state, but if you look at what the state spends money on right now, and if you believe in your needs and that your needs are good, then you know, go for it. You have to be an advocate for it. And one of my old rules in life is nothing ever got wasn't gone after. And in this situation, you have to go after it fairly hard. Another thing that I ran across recently, I'm a big believer in industry and private enterprise and doing as much as they can. But I saw a little news article here recently that someone in Fort Collins is now opening a starter tree nursery to grow growing stock. And I wish them luck, but I also think it points to somebody with private money is willing to put money there. It points to a need, and I think the need is pretty big. So I think your nursery program obviously fills a need. And lastly, I realize that a lot of the money comes from the feds, but sometimes if you invite in too much federal money, you invite in a lot of federal control. I don't know where you'll be with that, but good luck with it. That's all.
That's good feedback, and we are not pulling any punches at all. But you know, we're just doing the best that we can to straddle that fine line between advocacy and information sharing. So just know that the reason I share some of that nuance is so that this group can continue to activate in the way that only it can, with the best information and with the relationships and engagements that we have on a routine basis. And yeah, that the demand is significant. So, you know, we're reaching out to that little fledgling nursery in Loveland and seeing how we can support them and engage them, acknowledging that the demand is so significant that there's really no need to worry about competition at this point, at least in the Intermountain West. One thing I was going to add real quick is that I would love at some point with this group to introduce the Council of Western State Foresters as a group based in Denver that has policy staff and executive directors, and so they run a lot of they focus and are really the architects of a lot of forest management policy in DC and nationally. And it's one of those things that like possession is 9/10. So I would love to actually at some point introduce that group, bring in their policy analysts and let them brief you on some of the things at the national scale, and just connect this group to some of the resources that we have just geographically. That goes for, James, one of the tasks that he'll be engaged in is establishing better relationships with Western Governors Association, the folks that have forestry in their portfolio, and some of those other entities that just happen to be rooted here in the state of Colorado. So, and then to let this group at least get some information flow with not just the issues that are important to Colorado, but the national issues that have impacts to Colorado as well. So just an idea that I was kind of thinking about. We often, when we're out of the session, I'm thinking we'll hopefully have some time to breathe a little bit and focus on some other top policy topics that might be valuable for this group and the larger council. So I'd love feedback on that. We can do that offline, and if we have other issues.
Sounds like an agenda item. Thanks, Director McCombs. We appreciate you connecting resources. Commissioner Cooper.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt, for that update. A couple of years ago, I think it was maybe 5 years ago now, I was encouraged to apply for the Forest Research Advisory Council, which is a federal FACA. It's a federal board that advises the Forest Service on where they spend their research dollars. And I had sort of forgotten about it. I've had a big transition that I'll talk about in a minute that's not directly relevant to this, but they notified me that I now have a seat on the Federal Research Advisory Council. And my employer, soon to be the state of Colorado, in 2 to 3 weeks, I am leaving my county seat and moving to work for the state, agrees that it's a good overlap in my new role, which I won't take too much time right now on, but I will now be representing the state on the Forest Research Advisory Council. And Matt, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this. I'm helping my parents out this weekend, so I haven't had a chance to do much this week, but I'm very excited for that new role and don't exactly know what it means, but you guys know as much as I do. It's advising the federal government on dollars that go into forestry research. So, or research for forests, not necessarily completely forestry research. But anyway, I'm very excited. I'm going to be transitioning out of my role on this board, sadly, because I've loved it, not till the end of the session, but will hopefully continue to overlap with this group and specifically the work that you're doing at the state in my new role, kind of specifically on forestry products for housing. So sort of a direct connection, and wanted to let you all know that before you had to drop off if you do, but yeah.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Cooper. Congratulations. Okay, so with that, any other questions about those two bills? As we know, we're getting near the home stretch. And then just a reminder, session ends on May 8th, so we should have answers about this very shortly. So, still waiting for Courtney. I'm hoping, Daphne, Courtney, we haven't had any, still kind of waiting. So we'll just move on to.
I think she should, we can move on. I wanted to let you know that she said she has one more bill to listen to in the Appropriations Committee, but that Senate Bill 5 just passed unamended through the Appropriations Committee. So that's good news for us.
Great. So now it's going to go to the floor. Excellent. Okay. Well, there's another update, and that's quite the immediate update. So that's great news. So now we'll talk about the stream restoration bill. And we don't have a lot of details. I can say that is probably one of the latest bills I testified on. I started to go to bed at 11 o'clock because I was told by staff that wasn't going to happen till the next day. And then I got pinged at 11 p.m. that it's going, get on. And so I testified after midnight. But that bill passed out of committee, but it's heavily, heavily amended. And the bill is mostly focusing on minor stream restoration projects. And there's some discussion on that, but it's, I'm going to turn off my camera there. So I can't say I understand all the amendments because I'm still waiting for kind of the update on that, but it was heavily amended and we were going to wait for Courtney to kind of give us that update on the things. But I know that Christy had some questions about that. So Christy we sent out the memo. I didn't hear any back from anybody regarding taking action on it or just other than they appreciate the memo and thanks for the update, but I didn't hear any feedback from anybody on the council about taking action on it. So just wanted to give you all a heads up on that. So Christy, what was your questions?
I had a couple of questions. Well, one question and maybe one comment, and perhaps they will be addressed in these amendments. But question would be, is there any language that prevents a stream restoration project from going through private property? There's some language that I did not understand in section I, and it mentions real property interests. But my question would be, you know, could somebody who wants to do a stream restoration project be able to go through, say, a large private ranch without, okay. And maybe somebody offline can explain, you know, what that language means and how it clarifies that that can't be done. But then a comment that I have just as a water rights owner is the burden of proof is on the water rights owner to show injury, to show material injury. And they've got up to 2 years after the project to do that. But I think it's onerous and it would be very expensive for a private landowner to be able to, number one, prove something, you know, because you're going to have engineering reports and all kinds of stuff. And then number two, you know, try to enforce something like that after the project is already done. Overall, that was it. Those were my only comments and questions.
Well, we can certainly get those get those questions answered from Daphne, but I was going to ask you to speak up to Commissioner Cooper, because I know you also testified on that bill, and I know you've been kind of you know, following it and part of it as well. So what kind of other information can you share, Commissioner Cooper?
I can just tell you, I did not catch that specific part of the language, but in order to do a stream restoration project, you have to have permission from all landowners. You can't just go onto somebody else's land and you know, do something. So it does not give permission to trespass and do repair work or restoration work on anybody else's land. And you know, you wouldn't be able to get money, and that has not changed. The other piece I was going to try to assure you of, Christy, is that your concerns were very strongly advocated for by the water community, which is why the bill got, many of us believe, gutted essentially to minor restoration projects. And there's still a question mark. It'd be great to hear from Daphne right now, because I've only got a chance to talk to her as these amendments were being negotiated in the hallway. But there's a question about sort of those medium scale restoration projects and what kind of process they have to go through. And the water community did come around and support the bill with these amendments. So I'm pretty sure your concerns got addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. Yeah, the water rights folks and there was a lot of testimony, and it was an interesting discussion. So, so with that, we'll just move on, and we can always ask when Daphne comes, she can provide more details because she was up later than any of us. So, anyway, so we'll move on now to our next agenda item. Is I think it's just new business and talking about. Is that right, Courtney? Yes, I don't have it pulled up in front of me right now. Yeah. Right. So I just wanted to share real quick for new business and see what anyone else has new business. I attended the Colorado Wildfire Conference in Fort Collins last week, which absolutely was phenomenal. It was just outstanding. And there were a couple of things I wanted to share with you about the keynote speakers. There was a lot of forestry restoration work and a lot of discussions, a lot of networking. It was probably one of the biggest ones they've ever had, which was really outstanding to see. But there was one, I wanted to share the three kind of keynote speakers. The first was, it was the, from the Christopher Swanson, I believe he's with the U.S. Forest Service. And he was talking about fire risk and expectations in a changing climate. So he was talking about you know, forests recovering with this new climate and the changes in climate, and then how fires are acting and changing their behavior. And so it was really fascinating. It was and it was the fire. Corey, you have to remember the fire vector quotient. What was that term? It was, but it's kind of scary. What he shared was he kind of felt bad. He said, "Well, I feel like I hit you over the head with all this information." It was kind of sobering to see all the data showing that fires are not going to behave the same, and they're going to be actually a little more at risk for communities. And I think it's fire vector quotient something.
Soil vapor deficit.
Oh, so say that again.
Soil vapor deficit.
So okay, that's what it was. So I couldn't find my notes.
Pressure deficit essentially is what it's, but it's not worth getting through.
Yeah, it's pretty technical.
It's relatively complicated, but the way that soil and air interacts is been upended, and so it's creating drier conditions, which lead to larger and more destructive wildfires and less capacity for landscapes to recover after fire events.
Thank you for that. I had my notes, but I was not thinking ahead for this meeting. I gave my notes to my staff and said, I want to have a talk about this. So I gave all my notes and everything to the staff. And then one thing I wanted to share with you, I was really excited. The other keynote speaker was Dr. Well, she said let's call her Dr. Kimmy, but Dr. Kimiko, trying to look for her name, hold on. Kimiko Barrett from Headwaters Economics out of Bozeman, Montana. And she was talking about some of the conditions for accelerating adaptation to wildfire. And guess what? One of the things she talked about was getting the skills and increasing the workforce and getting the folks with the skills out into the landscape doing the work. And I talked to her offline about our forestry bill, the Senate Bill 5, and we basically we're doing what she recommended. And I found that really exciting and heartening to know. Even this national expert was, saying this is what you should be doing. So it was really great. Oh, thanks, Director McCombs. Also, she shared a tool, which I've got to find. I told Courtney. Courtney was there, and Allison Lurch and Director Gibbs was there at the conference, and others. And there's a mapping tool that I think we'll find interesting that I have to grab off her presentation. I haven't had time this week to do some of this other homework. That's why I handed all my notes off to my staff. But it was this, you could look at census data and look at vulnerable populations. And I thought it might be helpful to share that also with the Leveraging Resources Subcommittee, because it's some of the work that they're also doing. And then the last panel I wanted to share was a panel with, that it was the Biden administration panel on, I think it's called, hold on, I gotta make sure I get the correct title. Colorado, the Wildfire Mitigation and Management Commission with the Biden administration, and our own Director Gibbs is on this commission, along with Paul Hubbard, someone from the Denver Water, and Dr. Kimiko Barrett's on it. And they're doing some amazing work. I hear that it's kind of top secret, they said, until September, but it should be a really amazing document for us to all share. And Director Gibbs and all the folks did an amazing job. And it was really interesting to learn about that. So I wanted to share that with you because I'm hoping to gather some of those resources and share them all once I find that tool. Courtney, anything else you want to share about? And Director McCombs, of course, welcomed everyone and did a great introduction. But Courtney, anything else you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I thought the conference was really great. I think one thing Chris Swanson was talking about was preparing, like not only maintaining the status quo of our forests, but preparing them for the changing climate and like allowing them to be adapting. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think it sort of ties into the 30-year vision that this council is tasked with creating for the forests in Colorado. So it'll be interesting when that action item sort of comes up into the council's priority list, I think. And I also just dropped in this the federal wildfire risk to communities tool, which I think is what Dr. Kimmy was sharing during her presentation. Oh, you're on mute, Jody.
Yep, that's the tool. Thank you for saving me some time. I can grab it. So it was an amazing tool, and thanks for helping me share about that vapor vector thing. I will have to get that title down. It was such an amazing conference and great information. So with that, anyone else have any, Commissioner Cooper shared her good news, any other new business?
I'm going to put in the chat here. So on Tuesday at the governor's in brief for where all of the fire managers and natural resource managers get together and do the preseason briefing for the governor for wildfire. He will be announcing the Live Wildfire Ready Colorado campaign, and that is in relation to Senate Bill 007 from last session, Senator Story's bill that created that charged us to build a wildfire awareness campaign above and beyond just the proclamations and the outreach that we've done historically. And so working with a team of experts as well as a bunch of folks from DFDC, State Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, and state fire chiefs have developed this new statewide campaign that will be launching next Tuesday. If you go to the link, you'll see coming May 2023. That website will fully populate once the governor's announcement is concluded on Tuesday. But we're really, really excited about the resources in the toolkit. It's designed to be a really bottom up to just give counties and communities the tools they need to be successful while having an umbrella of sort of language on how we talk about wildfire in the state, and individual communities and parcel owners themselves, as well as just individuals themselves, their unique roles and responsibilities as it relates to living wildfire ready. So that's pretty exciting, and I look forward to sharing more once the launch occurs next week.
Thank you, Director McCombs. Ms. Morgan, and I think Commissioner Cooper. Mr. Morgan.
Yes. You asked for new business, correct? Okay. One of the things that I want to thank everybody for all the support on working so hard on Senate Bill 5. But in my mind, I view that as a very small beginning to solving a problem. So what I'm looking for is the next step and the next program, and how to I've been trying to impress upon the junior colleges that they need to take this and run with this and show them what we can do with it and the value and the merit of it. But then to me, that's a very small beginning on solving the problem that we have. So I'm looking for any feedback from anybody here on what's next and how we can expand it and grow it. This needs to grow like a virus. You know, it doesn't need to crawl. It needs to get up and run as soon as it can.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. And I'm going to pause real quick there because Daphne's on. So I see Hillary Cooper and Rickman, but I said when she got on, I was going to have her jump on. And I happened to see the Front Range Community College folks on Wednesday night at an event in the program there, and we talked about that. So Daphne, thanks for coming on. I'm sure you're running in all different directions, but we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Of course. And I hate to interrupt. Do you want me to jump into a legislative update, or what would be most helpful?
We did. We have already kind of went through, but why don't you update? I think we had some questions. We just heard that Senate Bill 5 is out of appropriations in the House, and maybe what's next steps, and it has not been amended. We touched on everything, but maybe you can go into more in depth. And then stream restoration bill, there was a couple of questions. Thank you.
Sure. So I believe that Courtney passed along the amendments that were adopted in the Senate Appropriations Committee to Senate Bill 5. I think that you guys had a couple of questions about those, but let me know if anything is outstanding. And then this morning it passed out of the House Appropriations Committee on a 4-3 vote. In the Senate, it was a 23-9 vote. In the House Ag and Natural Resources Committee, it was unanimous. So it doesn't seem like it will be unanimous in the full House, but it does still have strong bipartisan support. Just wanted to mention that the COSWAP funding, the $1 million a year, is still in the bill, along with all of the other funding necessary to implement the programs throughout the bill. So any questions about that one?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay, great. And then moving on to the stream restoration bill, not sure to what extent you guys covered this one, but there's been a lot of negotiations going on with stakeholders. Those negotiations and conversations led to a pretty significant change to the bill, whereby we cut the focus back to just the minor restoration activities. So things like bank stabilization projects, wet meadows restoration, stream daylighting. Those are just a couple of examples. Originally, the bill had another category of projects above what is considered minor restoration activities, and we were trying to figure out what the appropriate limitation could be on those projects and what the process could be for project operators to make sure that it wasn't too onerous, but also was protective of water rights holders. You know, I think several weeks ago, we talked about how we were using a historical footprint limitation, whereby the project operator would need to demonstrate that they're restoring the stream to its historical footprint and nothing beyond that. The water community really struggled to kind of wrap their heads around that. So we moved to a surface acre and acre foot cap per structure, per project, per stream mile, and it just got complex and didn't really get to a spot where everybody was in agreement on what those numeric limitations should be. You know, we heard that it was a one-size-fits-all approach, not the most scientifically sound approach. And just given the disagreement amongst the conservation community and the water rights community on what the numbers should be, we decided it was best to take a step back on those larger projects to come together in the interim and try to flesh out a more scientifically sound approach that both sides are comfortable with. So more to come. The sponsors in the Senate did commit on the mic that this would be one of their first 5 bills next session. So we'll definitely be working at it over the interim. But at the end of the day, we do feel good about what remains in the bill. There's still quite a bit that's accomplished by providing that legal clarity on minor restoration activities, and those would not be subject to really any onerous process at all. So happy to take any questions about that. The bill did pass through the Senate unanimously after those changes were adopted, and it is set for a hearing in the House Ag, Water, and Natural Resources Committee on Monday.
Great. Anybody have any questions? Okay, well, I think we'll let Daphne get back to it. Daphne, any other things we should know about or heads up or?
I don't think so. I was just going to quickly mention the other workforce related bill that has a small nexus to forestry programs. That one's still sailing through the process as well. It passed out of the House 56-6. It looks like they tagged on a little bit more funding for CDPHE to recruit healthcare professionals and other things that shouldn't be really relevant to this group. But all of the funding that could be eligible for forestry workforce efforts is still in there. It seems to be on a good track, passed out of the Senate Education Committee unanimously.
Great. Well, we appreciate all your work, and we'll let you get back to it. So
All
unless
right.
anyone has a burning question, we'll let Daphne get back into the trenches. So, oh, what time is the ad committee on Monday?
1:30, but right now timing is a shot in the dark, just because of the floor work. It's really unpredictable. So 1:30, but it could go later than that for sure.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
All right. You too. Bye.
Thanks. Okay, so back to Mr. Morgan. Then we have two other people that raised their hand. And Mr. Morgan, that was kind of what the other agenda item at the bottom was, just next ideas and projects. And as we have this hopefully success of having Senate Bill 5 and these others pass, how do we continue on our momentum? So I think you're right. And I'm hoping this our Forest Health Council in May will allow us some opportunities to talk about what do we do next. So I think it was Commissioner Cooper and then Director McCombs that had their hands raised.
Oh, thanks. I just looked at the web page. So it looks like the toolkit or the Live Wildfire Ready is really targeted at homeowners. As you know, we've been talking about that on the leveraging committee, how to create a toolkit, sort of pre-wildfire toolkit, but it doesn't sound like this is more sort of home site specific, and we should continue working on that pre-wildfire toolkit for communities.
Yeah, there's a lot of different entities that are sort of building out this. I mean, we got briefed by a group that's working with Forest Trends to build out this entire sort of comprehensive toolkit, where we talked to a couple other entities that are also working on that pre, during, and post playbook concept. And so we're trying to figure out how we're going to integrate all of this into this Live Wildfire Ready campaign. It was primarily focused on Wildfire Awareness Month, and then to try to take Wildfire Awareness Month and make it a much larger, longer cycle, so that we're constantly getting Coloradans attuned to their individual responsibilities and the risk that they need to mitigate. And so I think that going forward, so there's a task force associated with this bill as well, and they'll be making recommendations after year one that we can fine tune in year two. And I think part of that's going to be integrating, at least connecting to, so that we can direct people to those more discrete subcomponents of the mitigation message. But it's a big umbrella to start, Commissioner. Just haven't exactly figured out how to. We don't want to swamp people. We want to draw people in and get them curious and interested in, and provide them with a handful of tools. And we also want it to be community driven, give counties and communities the tools that they need to do targeted outreach under this umbrella as well. But I'll just be candid, it's still somewhat unrefined because it's going to be fine tuned as we go. The idea is to just launch some language and a context setting tool that will help hopefully unite the multiple disparate efforts that are in existence, that are that are everything from forest health in the backcountry all the way to the front door and the individual parcel owner's responsibility. So that's kind of where we're at. Does that get to what you're asking? Because I don't abandon anything. If you're working on stuff with people that's helping people understand their risk and the tools that they have available to them to mitigate, we don't want to undermine or offset any of that collaboration or work that's going on.
Okay, just this council in the leveraging committee is working on this concept of a pre-wildfire ready toolkit, more for communities. And just want to make sure the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, and that still serves a purpose. Or if the state is working on that concept already, then probably the leveraging committee maybe should just be brought up to speed on what is happening, so we're not, going down a parallel track without being aware of what's already happening.
Courtney, will you catch that in the notes to have Hetty or somebody or from the group that put together Live Wildfire Ready brief the Leveraging Resources Committee to get them up to speed once it's launched next? Part of it, Hillary, is that it's kind of embargoed because we're waiting for the governor to launch this thing. So once it's out there, I think that's a great recommendation to get everybody who's working around this issue briefed in and figure out how to get feedback into that Live Wildfire Ready so that it's comprehensive, but also figure out ways or figure out how we're using resources thoughtfully, that we're not getting into duplicative work.
Thank you. Great discussion. Mr. Morgan.
I looked at the program a little bit and your toolkit there, and the real key of this is to get implementation, to get the activity done on the ground. And first you've got this tool, then you got to be the salesman and you got to get it sold. And I realize you don't want to duplicate resources, but oftentimes when people are investigating for themselves and deciding whether they want to do something, oftentimes hearing it from multiple sources also has a value in and of itself. And so sometimes you don't want to duplicate a bunch of efforts, but when you're in concert with those and they hear the same message from multiple intelligent sources, oftentimes it helps them take action. And so it's kind of like the second opinion for a doctor, but because the key here is to get them to take action and do the work on the ground. And that's just one thought I had was all. Thank you.
Yeah, I just would say, just real quick, like, if you think about, we talk about all hands, all lands, right? Cross boundary, like fire doesn't know jurisdictions. I was thinking about that as Mark was talking, that like, it really is going to take every level of government and every level of sort of community engagement to make this message permeate in a way that we do see a change condition as it relates to people taking more responsibility at the parcel level, at the community level, at the county level, and beyond. So I don't disagree. I don't want to see us lose any momentum anywhere, but to Commissioner Cooper's point, we want to make sure that we're not wasting valuable limited capacity that the individuals, the stakeholders in this space have, and that we're directing in the right place. So I think it starts with sharing information and getting people briefed in. And to the team's credit, this was a very short turnaround when the money showed up after the bill, and to put this campaign together and to work with get a contractor under contract and to work with all this stuff. So they're running the gun in as well. So but I think once it's out and it's in front of folks, we start getting everybody briefed in to figure out how we fold in, or we remain distinct but complementary.
Wonderful. Well, so I also want to make sure we're honoring everyone's time. So sounds like we covered everything, and I guess the other agenda item was just some topics about our next meetings. So we have our Forest Health Council on May 11th. It's in person. I hope to see you all there. We have some great tours lined up in my district, looking at some posted pre-fire and some forest restoration work, and lunch at a fire station, and then having our meeting in my the county building in Fort Collins, and then we have a brewery tour in the evening. I think that's all lined up. Those are all, the evening one's optional, but I wanted to tell you that there's some really cool people coming, and really excited to see you all in person. So our next meeting would be May 5th. And I was wondering, do we want to have a quick meeting and just update everybody on, we should know by then where our bills have passed, since it's really close to the end, or do we want to wait and just see each other in person on May 11th? And then I was hoping to have maybe an hour-long meeting at the week, or our next session after the Forest Health Council, so we could really dive into those next topics. Because last year, we worked all summer on refining and talking about what were next steps. And I think we should have some information or some idea from the full council talking about what our next areas of focus is, right, Courtney? Hopefully that comes. I don't know what the agenda looks like yet for the full council. Would that be
going over the priorities that the council voted on in February, just sort of keeping everyone on the same page of what the council decided they would like to focus on. So it does seem like a good time to come back.
So I just want to take a quick poll. Do we want to not have our meeting on May 5th? and then just wait to see each other on May 11th, the next week? Or do you want, and just have an email update on the bills and wait till we have our May 11th and give everybody a break? Or do you want to have a brief meeting to talk in person? What's your thoughts? Mr. Morgan?
I prefer to have the meeting because I'd like to think that we're going to have a lot of information that might be appropriate. And then my other reason is selfish. I'm really torn right now because the Colorado Industry Association annual meeting directly overlaps with Forest Health Council meeting. And it's going to be tough for me. I don't know how I'm going to split my time here, but I was really looking forward to meeting all you people in person, ones that I haven't. So I guess I'd like to be as prepared beforehand as possible.
Certainly, I think, well, I just want to put it out there to everybody because we'll have a lot of meetings in May. I'm open to having it when we can make it, you know, brief and keep our usual times and keep our cadence. I'm good with that. I just wanted to open that up for folks who maybe wanted to, since we'll be in person, but I'm good with the cadence. So anybody else have any other questions? Julie.
Maybe less about the meeting, our meeting on May 5th, and more about the meeting, the schedule for the 11th. And I apologize, Courtney, if I've missed it. Is there a full schedule out? I know there was a survey about, you know, what do you think you might be available for? But I just want to make sure I'm blocking enough time on the 11th to travel up, do all the things. Has that been circulated?
I haven't sent out a full schedule yet, but I'll do that today.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks. I want to attend as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Courtney, I can stay on and see where we're at on the fine tuning. So, okay, well, with that, I'll give everybody back on their Fridays. Thank you all for attending. What great discussions. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. So see you on May 5th and we'll see you on May 11th. Have a great day. Oh, just a motion to adjourn, please.
I'd so move.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. See you guys.
See you soon.